Hello and welcome to episode 431 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm here with a panel to, let's say, interrogate, make some inquisitive questioning towards them. But before we beat around the bush too much, let's introduce them. They are Wes Island.
Hey, everybody.
Audra Bowling.
Hiya.
Aleks Franiczek.
Hello.
And Paul Dennis.
Hello.
Paul, Aleks, Audra, Wes. This is the beginning of part 3 of our Dragon Age trilogy playthrough on Retro Encounter. 3 of us played through Dragon Age Oranges together in December of last year. Then a 4th joined us for Dragon Age 2 in February of this year. And now we have a full party of 5 for Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age 3 came out in 2014 in worldwide. It was a RPG of the Year contender when it came out. I remember losing a month of my life to it, but don't remember every part of that month because I fell into a time portal or something when that happened. But I have very fond memories of this game. Maybe looking at a little bit too much from a fandom angle on this. This is maybe the end of BioWare's truly excellent run of RPGs. Like if you think of their like Silver Age as Baldur's Gate through KOTOR, and maybe their Golden Age is the peak of Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and this is the end of that Golden Age. That's a little bit editorializing, I know, but
fingers still crossed for the future,
right? And
Yes.
I'm sure there's some Jade Empire fans in there that are mad that it's not included in either half. But Jade Empire is good. I don't mean to be rude to Jade Empire, but like this was after the Electronic Arts takeover of BioWare. BioWare had a couple of less successful games after Dragon Age Inquisition, but this game, even though it was plagued by crunch and bugs and many other things, was very positively received. And if you go on to Dragon Age communities nowadays, it's not very hard to notice that people have been replaying this game over and over for 10 years. And anticipation for Dragon Age Veilguard 10 years after the third game in the series is pretty warm, but also pretty cautious.
Yeah, I'm keeping as optimistic as I can about the Veilguard. Like, despite these last few years, Dragon Age still kind of gets the blood pumping, you know?
Oh, yeah. I agree. I think I'm hopeful for it.
Yeah, as a fantasy RPG setting, it was extremely clear to everyone that this was BioWare's interpretation of a RPG world not unlike a Dungeons and Dragons or an Elder Scrolls or even a Diablo in 2009. And it's them interpreting those elements of classic Western fantasy over the course of these 3 games. Each of the 3 games has a pretty wildly different, not a different tone, but at least a different story structure and gameplay structure. And it's not an accident, I think, that Dragon Age Inquisition is such a big open world, and also not a coincidence that it's 3 years after Skyrim. Paul, you were not with us for the Dragon Age Oranges or 2 episodes, but you were very keen to join us on these because you've told us outside of recording that this is one of your favorite games.
Yeah. I think this game's incredible. I hated it at first, don't get me wrong. It felt super boring, like the gameplay. But then, like, once I started getting more abilities and stuff, it really opened up. And the game assumes that you have prior knowledge. It is not very kind to someone who hasn't played the rest of the games before, and I hadn't. So it was kind of confusing. But
this was your first game in the series.
It was my first game in the series.
Oh.
But then I went on like a tear. I played all the other games, and I've read, I think, 2 of the books. So yeah, I think it's awesome.
I've read a couple of the books in the comics, and there's even an animated film called Dawn of the Seeker, starring Cassandra, before the events of this game. That is rough. I'm not a Dawn of the Seeker defender here. But BioWare really intended for Dragon Age to be a like successful multimedia franchise. Maybe EA had their hands in that direction as well. And then there are a lot of peripheral material for Dragon Age, but even on its own, even though it does have some assumed knowledge of other games and possibly even other peripheral works, because like Cole and a couple other characters debuted in one of the Dragon Age novels before this. Corypheus was the boss of optional Dragon Age 2 DLC, before Inquisition came out. And when I did play the games in order, but when I played this, I had not read all of the books, and I had not played the Dragon Age 2 DLC. So I was a little confused by certain things, but it is still a pretty ambitious, pretty large, pretty entertaining game, as long as you know, it's a game that I think encourages you to go at your own pace, but it's maybe not the best idea to go at your own pace. Aleks, I'm going to single you out here because I know this is your first playthrough of the game. How aware were you of don't spend too long in the hinterlands?
I got the PSA. I saw it on like I think it was like a whole like Kotaku article got released saying like please don't spend time in the hinterlands. So I got to the hinterlands. I started wandering around. I'm like, oh, this is like a cool kind of geography for an open world. And I started like I was reluctant to like get sucked into too many like optional activities, but before I knew it, I was asked to like get some sort of buffalo or something for like a farmer.
It's a gruffalo.
Oh, my apologies.
I think the quest is called Where the Gruffalo Roam.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and then like I ended up like finding like a skull thing that gave me like a bunch of shards to chase, and like I like as I like saw them pop up on my mini map, I started gravitating towards them, and then like after a bit of that, I'm just like, what am I doing? I need to focus on the main quest because this is literally killing my time and my life right now. Not worth it. And suddenly the game improved from there.
Okay, actually, you know what? I think I'm misremembering. I think it's Druffalo in Dragon Age, and Gruffalo is like some of the like bison-like enemies in a Dragon Quest game or something. But no, you're absolutely right, Aleks. This Dragon Age Inquisition dumps players fairly early into a large open world called the Hinterlands, but it's sort of easy to just lose yourself and keep going from marker to marker or exploring unexplored areas and spending an inordinate amount of time there. But parts of the game don't really unlock to the player until you get beyond that first visit to the Hinterlands. I mean, Wes, I know you've played this game a couple times, but you know that. But I think it's part of your personality to do what's in front of you. Did you find it a struggle not to stay in the Hinterlands?
Oh, it was so hard for me. Even though I knew better, I've played this game before. I know that it's a trap. The Hinterlands are a trap that will catch you for 12 hours. But still, I spent more time in there than I probably should have because
12 hours. I would add maybe 10 to that 12.
That might be accurate. But at some point I'm like, well, I need horses for the Inquisition, so just let me do these 2 quest lines. And well, wouldn't the Inquisition help with this agent? So I'm just going to go finish this little cult side quest over here and recruit them. And before you know it, you've wasted a lot
That's
of time
exactly
there.
how it was for me, man. I was like, listen, I have a limited time to do this. I can't stay in the Hinterlands. And then I just platinumed it and moved on. I spent so much time there, but I got a little more focused after that.
This didn't happen to me this time, but I remember when I first played this game 10 years ago, I spent so long in the Hinterlands, I defeated the cult and unlocked a Deep Roads tag that has a story significance way later in the game with one of the character quests, but I couldn't go through the last door in the tag because it's attached to this character quest. I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Already in the podcast, we're staying too long in the Hinterlands. So imagine what it's like in the game itself. This game has a very, very fun and media res opening menu screen. It begins at a peace treaty at a town called Haven, which is part of the story in Dragon Age Origins. It's where the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest is located. And you see lines of mages and lines of Templars single file shuffling into a building where peace talks are going to be held. And in this opening menu, once you press the start button or your controller equivalent, there's a huge explosion at that building, and then when the dust clears, it's clear that there's been some kind of accident or battle or disaster, and you build your player character called the Inquisitor. It can be any of the 4 principal races of Dragon Age, including a Kunari for the first time. It's a human, elf, dwarf, or Kunari. I believe in any of the classes, warrior, mage, or rogue, except dwarves cannot be mages. Oh, can Kunari not be mages? Can Kunari be mages in this version?
They can be.
They sure can.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they don't have to do the Tal Vashoth mage slave thing going on. That's good.
No, because I think they're all Talvashoth. I believe is how they do the Canary.
Yeah, your
Inquisitor.
Kunari was not raised in the Kuhn. They're part of a mercenary company.
Got it. Yeah, they I think they do give you. You don't get to choose your origin or background as with as much detail as in Dragon Age Oranges, but I'm still gonna call it that. You don't even have to think about correcting me. But like I mean, I was a dwarf this time around, and my background was that I was a former Carta agent that had just sort of taken a job as an assistant at this event when the explosion happened. But anyway, there's a big explosion. A large number of mages and Templars die, including not including, in addition to a bunch of Chantry personnel. Chantry is the church in the Dragon Age universe, including the Divine, which is the always female pope or of sorts of the Chantry organization. So the Pope's dead. This was a peace treaty between a Mage-Templar war that escalated in Dragon Age 2. Both sides are blaming each other for the explosion, and the only survivor is your character, who now has a mysterious green mark on his or her hand. And also a giant green crack has opened in the sky, and smaller versions of the crack are popping all over the continent with demons streaming from them. But for reasons that are not clear to you, until you sort of get out of where you've been captured, you're able to seal these cracks with the mark in your hand. Because sort of after the explosion, you wake up in a sort of Chantry organizations or prison quarters. A woman named Cassandra, who was a minor character in Dragon Age 2, is interrogating you. Eventually, she agrees to help you clear out you're in this area called the Frostback Mountains, to go out into the Frostbacks to deal with the trouble going on. And she is accompanied by a dwarven rogue named Varric, who was one of the playable characters in Dragon Age 2, and an elven mage named Sollosi, who was knowledgeable about Fade Rifts and is assisting the Inquisition, which is the organization that Cassandra is part of, and is very, very curious about the magic implications and Fade implications of all of these rifts. And so that's your sort of starting party. Yeah, I think you don't meet Varric and Sollosi until you and Cassandra sort of encounter them. But you're going around, you discover that you have the ability to close these rifts with the mark on your hand, and you go to sort of clean up part of the mess around the Frostbacks before returning to Haven. So that's a messy, not entirely moment-to-moment accurate retelling of the beginning of the game. Because again, I knew this is a long one, so I've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition for 3 weeks. I think I have over 50 hours in, and I still am not at the story midpoint. Because once you get going and you have your base at Haven, and you can go to you have a few opening quests at the Hinterlands. Hinterlands is the first of, I believe, 10 open areas, although the Hinterlands is one of the largest, that are just full of things to do. The amount of space to explore and optional content to engage in Dragon Age Inquisition is so massive. But is there any part of the opening segment of Dragon Age Inquisition that jumps out at us? I still love the opening menu exploding when you hit new game.
Yeah, that was
That's
so cool.
pretty good.
And that meeting is the culmination of the events of the book that introduces Cole, Dragon Age Asunder. And you kind of have a better idea. If you've read it, you have a better idea of like the scale of the tragedy of the Divine, like the Lady Pope dying there. So yeah, that's a pretty wild intro if you have like, the context of that book.
I've got to say, as a fan of primarily the games, though, running into Varric so quickly, and Varric and Cassandra, I guess, is kind of the big thing for me, because, I mean, they are the framing device for Dragon Age 2, and arguably some of the better parts of that game that has some serious problems. So it was just exciting to like, oh man, Varric's here already.
Yeah, I'd probably say the Varric and Cassandra showing up was great. Probably one of my favorite highlights of it beyond the intro explosion.
Also, the first time you close a Fade Rift, just absolutely bonkers. It's such a good effect. It feels so, like, sonically, it feels so
Yes.
freaking good to do.
The
Yes.
sound design, incredible.
You're going to
Yes.
be, I mean, if you play as much of the optional content as I have, which is not necessarily recommended, you're going to be closing maybe 100 of those through the whole game, but still the sort of alien sound as you're connecting to it, and then the really satisfying crunch when you sort of pull at the chain and get a sort of a splashy explosion. It does not get old. When I see fade rifts, I gotta address them. But yeah, generally speaking, after you secure some of the area around Haven in the Frostback Mountains, you're introduced to this organization, the Inquisition. They know you're special, so and you it does not appear that you are the person who started the explosion or killed the Divine. So you're a tentative ally of everyone here. We've already mentioned Varric, Solus, and Cassandra. There's also Leliana, who we know is an agent of the Chantry and is one of the companions in Dragon Age Oranges and makes a few appearances in Dragon Age 2. She's just awesome in general. I love Leliana. Is sort of the spy master slash information specialist of the Inquisition. And also Cullen, who is another character that surprisingly showed up in every single Dragon Age game. He was a Templar captured and tortured by the mages in Dragon Age Origins. Then he was the second command of the Templars in the Templar garrison in Dragon Age 2. And a sort of a he's an ally for I think most of Dragon Age 2, but he's on the side of bad for at least at an organizational level for part of Dragon Age 2. So his he's still a loyal Templar, but he is one of the good ones, as it were. And then also Josephine, who is a diplomat from Antiva, who is represents the Inquisition's reaching out to the governments and nobles of the area for economic and military support. And so those three characters are not playable, but they are important advisors that you engage with a lot over the game. And we've mentioned how the Hinterlands is a big open area. We've mentioned that you have a base at a place called Haven. We've mentioned you have multiple companions. I'm just going to get into it here. The bulk of this game, I would say like 80+%, is going to your base, talking to your advisors, seeing what stuff there is to do on your big map of the world. And then once you've taken care of stuff around base, going into one of the open areas in the world, exploring, fighting, teaming up with your companions, doing side quests, maybe pick up more agents to help the Inquisition, maybe just finding gold, just doing stuff everywhere. And then when your inventory's full or you run out of stuff to do or you just get bored, you go back to base, take care of more stuff again, and then go out into the world again. That is the game flow of a large part of this game. And almost every side quest and task you accomplish will give you two stats: power and influence, sometimes just one of those, sometimes both. And the more power you have, the more tasks you can accomplish on the world map. Like it's just power is basically just a representation of resources. And sometimes they'll be like, here's the next story quest, but you need to spend 30 power to do it. So if your power is low, you just need to do stuff around one of the maps until you have enough power to do it. And sometimes it's a little bit more specific, like, oh, here's a giant broken bridge. We can commit Inquisition resources to repair this bridge, but you need to spend 15 power to do so. And so you go back to your map at the base, spend power to do it, and influence gives you sort of more perks that both give you more options in dialogue. Perks can increase your inventory space. Perks can give you resources and money. It's influence perks and accomplishing tasks with power, and having like the active part of the game and the organization part of the game. The push and pull between those is a lot of the gameplay loop of Dragon Age Inquisition. And we've mentioned the Hinterlands. There's I think 10 areas, not counting 2 large DLC areas, that you can explore. And if it seems like power is going to be a limited resource, don't be worried about that, because because if you just do most of the stuff in the game, you will have hundreds of extra power to work with. But this game has less do anything freedom than say a Fallout or Elder Scrolls game. But it's at least in my feeling, and this is someone who enjoys this game generally, they give you these sandboxes to play in. They give you statistical carrots on sticks to follow. and narrative carrots on 6 to follow, because a lot of the writing in Dragon Age Inquisition is great. They had something like a dozen writers going into the characters and quests into this game. And basically you can spend exactly as much time as you want to either do the bare minimum and get through the story, or get absurd amounts of power and influence before continuing the story. And that's just great. But and I love most of it, but again, all that stuff about don't stay in the hinterlands too long is valid, because you get a lot more options and more freedom after the first few story beats. And it's generally recommended to get to those story beats before really going hog wild in the world of Dragon Age Inquisition. So that was me talking a little bit too long. And I mean, other than the hinterlands, I mentioned that there's 10 base areas plus 2 DLC ones. Is there a favorite zone we have to explore? Because I mean, you have your base at Haven, then a second base called Skyhold, and a large city called Valroyo, which seems a little bit small to be the capital city of the biggest country in this world. And these 10 other zones. Is there a specific setting that we really like, or maybe one you particularly dislike in Inquisition?
At this stage in the game where we're at, I think the Storm Coast is my favorite place to visit, if nothing else because of that killer scene you can catch of a giant and a dragon fighting, which is one of the coolest environmental events someone's put in a video game, I think.
Yeah, you stumble across 2 late game enemies just fighting in a mid game part of Dragon Age, and I fought that dragon later. I was at level like 18, and it kind of kicked my ass. So you don't want to accidentally try fighting that dragon too early.
I really like the Western approach, just from how they kind of describe it as like everyone hates it. It's like in that world, they're like, this place sucks. But it was an interesting desert area, I thought. And I liked the whole quest line to beat the High Dragon.
Yeah, there's a quest line in the Western approach to sort of like understand the ecology of its local dragon and then fight the High Dragon. There's also a fortress in the Western approach that you liberate and then can make into sort of a mini Inquisition base.
Yeah.
That's pretty satisfying. You get one of those bases also in the swampy forest area called Crestwood, and another fortress in the icy area Emprise du Lion. And having fortresses is pretty cool in this game. I really like all 3 of those quests where you liberate a fortress and get a bunch of extra quests as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crestwood, I think, was one of my favorite places because you kind of get 2 maps for the price of 1. You go into it and it's like all stormy and there's a bunch of water all over the place, and it feels a lot like the Follow Mire. But then,
which is even swampier and darker than Crestwood.
Yeah, but then once you fulfill the requirements or whatever, the whole place changes and kind of looks more like the hinterlands. And I don't know, there's just it really opens up. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens there. And I think that was probably the first like judgment that I ever did, was the guy that comes from that place.
Oh yeah, I actually really like that judgment.
That judgment is great, and I would like to talk about judgments later this episode. Right. But before we get to that, Aleks, did you have a favorite zone that you approached in the first half of the game?
Yeah, I did actually really like the Western approach as well. I thought visually it was a great change of pace from like kind of the grass, dirt, and rock colors you got in most of the other areas. And yeah, like liberating even though I liberated like a zone in Crestwood beforehand, I thought like the Western approach just had like a lot of like flavor to it as well, with like how it fed back into like boardroom decisions and things like that. I thought that was just really interesting, like in terms of like strategically engaging with the space and also just like spatially. But I the Follow Mire, just because it didn't come up yet, also made like a pretty strong impression on me, because it has like kind of like a gimmick where like you can't really go in the water because like it's like a cursed land, and if you go in water then, and it's like very swampy, then like a bunch of enemies come up and you have to like deal with them. So like as you're navigating this like very dark swampy space, you kind of have to like look at where you're going and like navigate around the water and sort of
And find drive ground or hop between planks or something to avoid, because if you're in the water for more than about a second, then undead start surrounding you.
yeah, and then you like capture those little like posts and you get like that green fire to carry around. I thought it just like had a really like interesting like atmosphere, and in terms of like being like kind of just another like open zone space, like was interesting to like engage with on a gameplay level as well. So I really liked what they did with that. Wonder if any of the other zones later in the game do something similar.
The Followmire is one of the smaller zones in the game. It's probably less than half the size of the Hinterlands. And trying to think of one that we haven't talked about yet. I really like the Emerald Graves, which is a very, very lush foresty area, and it's really a really good time. There is a dragon at one far end of it if you like explore the very, very deepest parts of the Emerald Graves. There's a hidden village of refugees that you meet. And collaborate with their leader to defeat some bases of Templars in the area. And if you can locate the Templars to clear them out of these abandoned buildings. The Graves is a beautiful forest area that was like vacation homes and summer homes of Orlesian nobility, but it's been taken over by bandits and Templars. And it's really beautiful to explore. The ongoing story in it is pretty satisfying. And there's a dragon at the end of defeat. So like the Western approach, it's surprisingly layered for being a generic biome. It's like this is the forest zone if Western approach is the desert zone, but it's pretty fun to engage in. And there's like again, for almost any area in the game, it's very possible to spend way too long in one area and completely ignore the actual A story of Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah, one of the best gameplay decisions I think I made was just to like stop even like engaging with those skull markers that put the shards on your map, because like once it's on my map, like I can barely resist. So I just have to like avoid getting those markers on my map in the first place so I can just enjoy not wasting my time.
Oh
Yeah,
and
just walk past the marker points.
But then you'll hear that like weird echoey ringing sound. And then don't you want to play the terrible search and find without a reticule to find all the shards in each one?
I can't imagine 100%ing that. Like,
well, the problem is there's another region, one of my least favorite regions of the game. It's it's the Oasis area near the Western approach. I forget what it's called.
Is it the Hissing Wastes?
Not the Hissing Wastes. The third desert area, because there's three. But there's one that it just has a central temple in it, and you can't get to the bottom of that zone in the game until you find all of the shards from those skull mini games. It's annoying. It's the I feel bad for forgetting it. I think it might just be called I think it might be called like the Western Oasis or something, but it's like my least favorite in the game. The Hissing Wastes is the night desert area that's real frustrating. I don't recommend doing the Hissing Wastes until you've done most of the others, because it is nothing but giant empty desert with 6 or 7 dwarven ruins in different corners of the desert. And you have to, at each dwarven ruins, you solve a puzzle, get a dragon, and then get some. And at the final dwarven ruins, you guessed it, there's another dragon. But it's the Hissing Wastes has good rewards, but it's one of the more challenging and more boring areas of the game. Like wait until you're level 15 or something to do that one. But Western approach, Emerald Graves, Crestwood, Hinterlands, really, really solid RPG spaces to explore. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, I thought that the dragon fight in the Hissing Waste was really cool. The one at the nest.
Yeah, it's at a nest that's also kind of a lower area. It's almost like a scooped out arena, which isn't the literal arena that's in the Emprise de Leon. But at Emprise de Leon, after you liberate the base, there's 3 dragon fights in a row there. There's just a whole like dragon corner of the map that you can unlock. But there's 10 high dragons you fight in the area. They give you really, really good material rewards and a strong, unique weapon every time you defeat one. So they're worth seeking out. But they can get pretty hard. They're always either fire, ice, lightning, or poison elemental. It's helpful to like work to make sure you have the right teammates equipped with opposite elements and resisting equipment on to fight each one. For 2 of the 10 dragon fights, my entire team died, and I was just sitting there as the last person standing, wailing on the dragon and having to defeat it without my team, because they're just not great at keeping themselves alive, and they drank all of my potions. But the dragon fights are more intense and entertaining than a lot of the other trash in this game, because you get into a lot of fights with, bandits and demons and undead, that it all sort of runs together until you get something interesting like a dragon.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that I was whacking at the dragon indiscriminately until it died, and that's because let's talk about our inquisitors a little bit in detail. I went with a female dwarf warrior this time around. I'm doing my build is sort of funny. I'm focusing on a lot of defensive talents and abilities, but I'm not equipping a shield. I'm doing 2-handed giant axes and hammers, but keeping my defense very high. So I just go immediately into the fray and hit them with my giant axe over and over, but I'm exceptionally hard to kill while doing so. So it's like it's a tanky bruiser build without a shield. And I am kind of approaching every fight with the same meathead wrecking ball attitude, while my mages and rogues just shoot arrows or cast spells behind me. And I'm not really using the other 3 warriors in my party, which is a little bit of a shame. But I'm still having fun, even if my whole party dies while I'm whacking at a dragon's ankles sometimes. I'm enjoying myself, and like I mentioned, the dwarf background in this game is a Carta agent, and I like that they give you options between a British and American English voice actor for each gender, because in Dragon Age dwarves speak with American accents, so I was able to keep that part of my of the fiction alive. So does anyone else want to share how they built their Inquisitor up? Again, I went with 2-handed warrior, female dwarf, champion specialization. I'm an unkillable bulldozer, and it's great.
I tried warrior class for the first time in a DA game, and I went with the female elf build, and she's a reaver who uses sword and shield, which has been pretty interesting.
Oh, so you've been doing some spend some life, heal some life going on. Oh, I was too much of a coward to try that build. I wanted as much protection and armor on my 2-hand warrior as I possibly could. But how has that been fun building up those Reaver talents? Because I don't like Reaver in oranges, but I've heard it can get quite strong in Inquisition.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty potent build, I'd say. I like a lot of the special moves just to damage. And then I can always just shield bash when I need to.
Now, neither of us picked this one, but the third specialization for warrior, if like champion is a bunch of big defensive and taunt abilities. Reaver has extra damage by losing health, but also ways of regaining health. The third one is Templar, which is in every Dragon Age game, other than Veilguard, usually. And that gives you a lot of like anti-magic defense. It gives you abilities that boost your teammates, and a couple moves that let you sort of do giant magic nuke explosions once every 60 seconds or so that I've heard are quite powerful, but I went with champion this time around. Does anyone else want to share how they built their Inquisitor?
Mine was it was an elf archer, and I usually don't pay too much attention to like how I like distribute my skill points. But what I always end up doing is shooting for like masterwork armor and weapons, and then putting the what was it? Is the material that gives you hidden blades, like a 10% chance to do hidden blades with extra hits on both of them. And so hidden blades is just going off all the time. And yeah, so I just like delete enemies, but not a whole lot of longevity, you know. So I had to lean on warriors for a lot of the time too.
The thing I always go for in equipment in this game is critical hit chance, because there's an early warrior ability you can get at level 2 or 3 with that lowers all of your cooldowns by 1 second whenever you get a critical hit. So if you're getting critical hits all the time, you can use your abilities extremely frequently. So I'm using my bull charge and my mighty blow and my Scorpion from Mortal Kombat get over here chain basically all the time. When everything's on cooldown, I'm just swinging my giant axe and getting more critical hits. So it's a very critical hit, highly defensive warrior build. Which specialization did you go with, Paul?
Assassin.
Cool.
So that I had hidden blades.
Okay, makes sense. Aleks or Wes, how did you guys build your Inquisitors?
I tried to stick to my plan of doing a different race and class for all 3 Dragon Age games, so that left me with Elf Mage, which feels like a really interesting fit narratively for this game. But on more of the gameplay side, it was kind of boring at first, to be honest. Like, you kind of just like stand back flinging like little elemental balls at your opponents, and then like wait for your cooldowns for basically like an AoE attack or like a single target attack. So the early levels I was actually playing swapping more to like Cassandra with the sword and shield, and just kind of like really enjoying like the crunchiness that warrior seems to have in this game. Like, even just like blocking an attack as a warrior just has like such a meaty, satisfying sound.
Yeah, geez, these guys played a little bit of Dark Souls or something, because they give you a couple parry abilities as a warrior,
and as a rogue as well, especially if you're dual wielding. But yeah,
oh nice, because I played mage when I played this game 10 years ago, and a warrior this time. I've never done a rogue in Inquisition.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I wasn't really loving mage at first, like I was swapping a lot to like my companions, and compared to like the earlier Dragon Age games, like the swapping between party members mid fight just feels like really seamless. So doing that has actually been like really fun, kept the gameplay fresh. But now that I am like more leveled up, like and I have like another mage, Sollosi, in my party as well, and so we have like all the elements covered. So like having him like freeze like a bunch of enemies and then I like explode them with fire, it feels like great now. And I ended up going for my specialization, Knight Enchanter, but because it's literally the last thing I did in the game before this podcast, I can't comment too much on how it feels. But the idea of like kind of a more melee focused mage honestly sounds amazing. So looking forward to experimenting with it.
Yeah, all of those staff attachments that give you blades or swords are made with Knight Enchanter in mind. Knight Enchanter gives you more barriers and melee attacks as a mage, and it's how I played the game 10 years ago, and remember it mostly fondly. And you know, we mentioned specializations and everything. There's 3 classes, each has 3 specializations, and not by accident you have 9 companions that are those same 9 specializations. So if you say if you're a mage but want to try out a champion warrior like I'm playing, you can your companion Blackwall is exactly that, and you could build him up as a champion alternative if you want to try out that class. So you could say that your Inquisitor sort of replaces one party member in precise role, but it at least gives you all of the roles to play around with, even no matter how you build your Inquisitor, which I think is nice. It's but that's a very, very BioWare thing to have all of your companions represent a specific worldview and a specific theater of gameplay as well. Because I mean, the 6 companions in Mass Effect 1 are the 6 classes as well, so it's not that surprising. But Wes, you're the only one that hasn't shared with the rest of the class. How did you build your Inquisitor this time around?
So I completed my goal of playing through all 3 Dragon Age games with a mage, because I'd never done a mage before. So I went with a Kunari mage, because I'd never done a Kunari either, and I thought Kunari would actually bring up some interesting role-playing options, which it sure as heck does. There are a lot of points when the special option has multiple options, because I can respond either as a Kunari or as a mage. Their background's really interesting. You get some cool interactions with both Sarah and with Iron Bull, who are both kind of mainstays in my party right now. I haven't gotten to the point of specializations because I barely made it to Skyhold in time, but I'm planning on going Knight Enchanter as well, because, I mean, that's the most fun-looking specialization for a mage. I think most people who look at a mage are eyeing that specialization when they make their character.
I mean, my favorite build I've ever done in the Dragon Age game is when I played Origins as a mage and played with an Arcane Warrior Blood mage. and just had an absolute blast doing that. So doing another melee mage build was very appealing to me when I first played this game. But I've deliberately gone with a different class through each of these 3 games in this the past 8 months of replaying. So I did a human rogue in oranges, and then a mage hawk in Dragon Age 2, and now a dwarf warrior in Dragon Age 3. And I really, really think over the 3 games they've tried to undertune mages and make warriors and rogues much more fun, because rogues and warriors are a little flat in Origins, where your mages have so many options, and because the gameplay is a little bit more tactical and paced, there's a lot of sort of positioning and auto attacking for warriors and rogues, which is an overgeneralization, but through as the games have been more action packed and have more of those team interactions, like Aleks mentioned, there was ways to like freeze enemies with ice magic and then explode them with fire magic or shatter them with warrior hits. Like I know my move Mighty Blow will shatter frozen enemies. So if I bring along an ice mage, I can shatter stuff for giant bonus damage, and I love it every time. They had some of those interactions in Dragon Age 2, and they've brought most of that back for Dragon Age 3. So a lot of the character building is pretty satisfying and powerful. I think they want every specialization to be fun in their way. And I only have a few regrets in my champion build, because I'm worried that the game is a little too easy, because I am completely unkillable once I have my GP, my guard points up, because it basically gives me a second HP bar that I can refill every few seconds. And I've never been in danger of dying since getting to level 8 or so. But it's but I am enjoying this way more than my memories of playing a warrior in Dragon Age Oranges. So if I replay this series again, which is a possibility, I might just go full warrior again, because I'm just having so much fun in Inquisition. But we've mentioned several companions over the course of this episode, but definitely not all of them. I mean, we know about Varric, Cassandra, and Solus. After you do some stuff in the hinterlands and go back to your base, you unlock a couple more companions to recruit. Wes, you mentioned the Storm Coast earlier in this. If you go back to Haven, talk to a mercenary that's visiting, he'll tell you that, if you want to hire my mercenary company, our boss is over in the Storm Coast right now. And then that's how you can meet the large Minotaur Qunari man, Iron Bull. He's the sort of reaver of your team. He is voiced very amusingly by Freddie Prinze Jr. And the husband of Sarah Michelle Gellar, one of my 2000s crushes. And Iron Bull's extremely entertaining. If you talk to, he seems a little bit like a determined, hard drinking meathead warrior, and he kind of is that. But he also lets you know right away that he is a spy for the Qunari, who's instructed to report on the Inquisition's activities. But he just tells you that straight away, and with the knowledge that, you can tell me exactly what you want the Qunari bosses to know. And also, Iron Bull, has been away from the sort of Qun for so long that he's been a little bit a little bit humanized, a little bit westernized, if you to the Qunari. So he is not as loyal to the Qun as, say, Sten in Dragon Age Oranges was, but he does give you the perspective of a Qunari character, and is really fun to talk to. Iron Bull's great. But in addition to Iron Bull, there's Blackwall, who is a Grey Warden warrior that lives in the hinterlands. You can't recruit him the first time you go to the hinterlands, but if you go back to your base and hear about the Grey Warden Blackwall, you can go and talk to him and recruit him. He's a sword and shield champion, very tanky, very bearded, but generally a nice guy Grey Warden, who is I think he might even be Duncan's replacement from Dragon Age Oranges, because he is a recruiter of Grey Wardens in the Ferelden area, which is exactly what your mentor Duncan was in Dragon Age Oranges. So he is a somewhat of a nurturing mentor figure. He's a team's tank, and he represents the perspective of Grey Wardens, a faction that is a big part of the Dragon Age world. And then your third warrior is Cassandra, one of your starting characters. She's a Templar, but she was in a special order of Templars called the Seekers of Truth. So she's like a Templar / detective / cool lady all around. Cassandra's great. She's the sort of classic tough girl, but with a hidden soft side or a hidden awkward side that I never ever get tired of in games like these. When you discover that she's been interrogating and sort of the handler of Varric for the past several years, trying to get Hawk's location out of him, but also is secretly reading his romance novels that he pens on the side. It's extremely fun and engaging with all that. But we haven't talked about the last two companions yet. Well, I guess we have two more to go into. The first time you go into Val Royeaux, you can meet a rogue named Sarah. She is an archer elf who is one of the Friends of Red Jenny sort of ringleaders. Friends of Red Jenny is an order of sort of hitmen and troublemakers that you can do missions for in Dragon Age 1 and 2. And at first it seems like she is Red Jenny, like the head of the whole organization. But then she makes it very clear that there is no head of the Friends of Red Jenny. It's just a scattered organization that is interested in assisting the downtrodden and taking down the wealthy. And speaking of the wealthy, also in Val Royeaux, you can meet Vivienne, an aristocrat mage who is perhaps surprisingly a supporter of the mage circles. She's not part of the mage rebellion because she's an Orlesian noble and a powerful mage. She sort of supports the status quo of mages being reined in by the Templars and maintaining order rather than giving mages freedom, which is in direct opposition to Solus, who is an apostate mage who cares deeply about the freedom of mages and researching like dark and dangerous magics. So that's 7 of the 9 companions. We'll get to the last 2 later. But what are our feelings on these? Because I don't want to speak for the whole group, but I love talking to this cast. I'm not sure I love it as much as, I don't know if it's my favorite Dragon Age cast because all 3 of them are great, but it is a delight spending time with these people. I just wish there was more in-game dialogue, which I know you can fix with with PC patches. But yeah, I love this cast. Does anyone else have a favorite or a specific observation or thought?
Like, out of the ones we've discussed so far, Blackwall is probably my favorite, but it's for reasons that we don't want to discuss just yet. He's got an awesome backstory, and I like his arc.
I also like how he's like the de facto tank character of the party, but he's also kind of like a short king. It's a nice little twist on your usual physique of a tank. But yeah, he's just this little stocky dude, but he's tough as heck and an amazing tank.
Based on his stature and his beard and maybe also his attitude, he's very dwarf-like for a human warrior.
He's Wolverine. No.
Oh yeah, I get it. Wolverine with more facial hair. I get it. Also, almost as unkillable as Wolverine.
I like all the characters really. Sarah. The first time I played the game, she was a little harder for me to warm up to, but I actually got some later story scenes with her this time around that I really am starting to like her quite a bit. She's fun.
She definitely felt like one of the more inconsequential characters in the deeper lore of the game. But yeah, once I started talking to her more, I'm just like she just feels very original in how completely carefree she is. She's written in a pretty unique way, despite kind of being an archetype for a rogue. But also within a sentence of her speaking, I'm like, hey, that's Mid from Final Fantasy 16.
Yep.
The one I recognized immediately is that Scout Harding is Liara from Mass Effect, and also Krem, the transgender character, is Fem Shep from Mass Effect. Jennifer Hale, who she certainly gets
cool.
around. But yeah, the cast in this game is really likable. The voice, a lot of dialogue is fully voiced. Cullen, Leliana, and Josephine are your advisors and not companions, but they have their own dedicated character stories and dialogue, and 2 of them are romanceable even. So they're sort of NPCs that are as important as your companions. and you get a couple more sort of in that same class later in the game as you build out your base. But yeah, I really like this cast. I really enjoy interacting with all of them, and I mean, it wouldn't be a BioWare game if they didn't let you romance some of those companions. Does anyone have either a romance they've pulled off or are planning to? Because
Blackwall was my original character's romance.
all right, is your rogue what's the race and class of your rogue? I'm sorry, race and gender of your rogue.
Well, the one that romanced Blackwall, which was a few playthroughs ago, was she was also a dual wield rogue, and she was an elf.
And currently now, are you another female elf romancing Blackwall again?
No, I'm not romancing anyone this time.
Oh, okay.
I went with the Sollosi route this time.
Oh, okay.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was
Sollosi
interesting with Valgard.
Sollosi is specifically, he is very specific. He again, because he really cares about preserving elf tradition, he's really only interested in other elves, and he's straight, so you can only romance Sollosi as a female elf. So I've not done that romance before because again I was a human male before, and now I'm a dwarf female. But yeah, I've heard that is a romance that goes places. I mean, I'll talk next, I guess. I mean, as a straight man, I know maybe this is surprising, but I have been gay in both of my playthroughs of this game. When I played this game 10 years ago, the character I had the most chemistry with, I felt, was Dorian, the mage that we haven't talked about yet, but we'll get to soon. Just because I thought we got along the best. And this time I'm romancing Sarah, the chaotic neutral elf, because I'm a dwarf that likes a fellow short queen, and Sarah's just fun. I mean I like how she's she's kind of all over the place, but is definitely more interested in having fun than anything serious. So seeing her seeing her catch feelings and be less interested in fun and more like afraid of being in love with someone, I think is actually super interesting. So yeah, I romanced Dorian as a male human 10 years ago, and now I'm romancing Sarah as a female dwarf.
Yeah, Sollosi is almost like the opposite of that experience, where like at first you're talking to him and he's just like, oh man, this is like the most like cold, like distant, like scholar type I've ever encountered. But then once you like start expressing like romantic interest and developing that a little bit more, like you get this like cool sequence where he like takes you like back to Haven after like some events we'll talk about later, and it's like kind of like it seems like you're visiting it, but it turns out to be like a dream, and like he kind of like lightens up a little bit and actually like becomes like a pretty charming character, at least a lot more charming than he was giving off at first.
Yeah, I like that element of the romance with him too,
for sure. And that romance definitely does pay off. But he's a great character anyway. His party banter is really cool.
I'm working on Sarah this time around because I didn't give Sarah a lot of time. In my first playthrough, I had a slightly more boring crew. Now I'm rolling with all the fun people, which is a lot more entertaining. And Sarah was instantly interested in a Kunari woman, and that kind of started leading me towards this is actually kind of interesting. So I'm hanging out with her and Dorian and Iron Bull, and it is a blast.
Oh, I can see that.
That's actually close to my main party. Again, because I am in Iron Bull's role a little bit. The team I roll with the most is Sarah, Varric, and Dorian. So there's a lot of very fun banter there.
Also a good time party.
Yeah, mine is Cole, Dorian, and Iron Bull.
I feel like 10 years ago I had a much more boring party because I used I think I had Cassandra and Solus a lot with a mage inquisitor, and then I would sort of switch between the three rogues.
Yeah, I have the extremely serious party of Cassandra, Solus, and Cole. Not much levity going on there.
Same, but the band, like I have the mod that increases party banter, and it's so awesome.
Sounds like
because,
a good mod.
It is, yeah. It's fantastic, and you know they're like they talk a lot about their backgrounds and ask each other questions, and it's not like usually funny, but it's definitely extremely interesting.
I do like having Vivienne in the party sometimes because she'll have some really interesting banter with other characters, or like her reactions to things are very interesting.
I like Vivienne. She's very acerbic, and because she's from nobility, but also sort of looks down on others, but is also mostly intelligent and I don't want to say respectful, but she acknowledges your companions while sort of thinking she's above everyone. But I like Vivienne.
Yeah.
I don't think she's as well liked by a lot of the fans, but I enjoy her getting into very very strange banter with Varric and Sarah.
Yeah, the Varric ones are always interesting.
But also she is a mage that sort of believes in the Circle and Templar system and maintaining order, while Solus is really does not want mages to be restricted at all. And Dorian has the perspective of a Tevinter mage, where again Tevinter is the country to the north where the mages are a ruling class and often involved in a lot of shady stuff. But he's rebelling against that system and trying but also he's like pro mage freedom, but also anti mages, really researching some dark stuff, because in the introduction, in the arc where Dorian's introduced, it's about mages researching some dark stuff. Let's talk about Dorian and Cole, the two we haven't talked about yet, and their introduction quests. One of the first major decisions that you make in this game that has story consequences is what is when you're building your Inquisition organization, you're trying to slow down, or at least if not end, at least mitigate the Mage-Templar conflict, so you can focus on the demons that are plaguing the town. And you can choose to either go to a Templar base to try to recruit Templars to your cause, or try to find the rebel mages hiding in the hinterlands and recruit them to your cause. And I went with the mage route this time, so I'll talk about that, and maybe someone that went the Templar route can talk about how that one goes. If you go the mage route, you discover that the mages have been sort of blindsided by a Tevinter group and entered a indentured servitude agreement with them, because there's still slavery in Tevinter, and you take down Tevinter slavers in all 3 Dragon Age games all the time, and which seems really shady. And eventually a mage named Dorian reaches out to you in secret and says that his former master, the leader of these Tevinter mages, has been using time travel magic extremely dangerously and illegally to manipulate history to get these mages on his side, and eventually sacrifice all of them, because Dorian's former mentor is a leader within the Venatori, which is like a secret society of evil mages based in Tevinter. So with Dorian's help, you confront this mage. You accidentally get thrown into a time portal for 1 year in the future. And 1 year in the future, the Venatori have completely taken over. The world is in a post-apocalypse. You go through Redcliffe Castle, which is again a location from Dragon Age Oranges, but it's been completely taken over by red lyrium and demons. You meet Liliana and whatever companions were in your party when you confront the mages. So you'll see them after they've been imprisoned and tortured for a year and are very very frightened and harrowed. You defeat the mages, defeat some demons that they summon. Like the dark 1 year later Liliana is kind of unsettling to deal with, because again she's scarred and hardened and just very grim. But you end up going into a portal back to the present day, and you're able to stop that dark future from happening. But in that, in over the course of that, you learn that there is a dark force that is intending to take over the world and create a very very bleak future if they're able to succeed in their plan on opening all of these rifts. And so that's how Dorian joins. And when you go back to Haven, you sort of move into Act 2 of the game. But if you can someone that sided with the Templars in this side of the quest tell me a little bit about the that alternative quest? Because I know that Cole joins you as a result there, but I don't know much else about it.
This is the first time I've done it, and this is like the 7th playthrough of the game, so I can barely remember the details. I think I'm the only one who went with the Templars, and I did that, kind of begrudgingly because the Templars are cops.
It's like, well, I think that the Templars in this game are less sort of outwardly evil than, say, Meredith's Templars in Dragon Age 2. Like there are well-meaning Templars here, but no matter which story path you take, a large portion of the Templars are corrupted by their leader Samson with a substance called red lyrium, and you fight monstrous Templars as well as Venatory mages and darkspawn monsters and undead and demons and bandits and a bunch of different factions of enemies over the course of the game. But as a result of but you meet a human / spirit named Cole in the Templar side of this story. And Cole is a very, very interesting character. Again, he's described he's a major character in the Dragon Age novel Asunder, which is I think the 3rd out of 5 Dragon Age novels that David Gator wrote over the course of several years. And Cole is a spirit of kindness or mercy that lived in the Fade, but then he met a young mage named Cole that was imprisoned in a circle tower somewhere, but had been forgotten by his Templar overseers and was left to die and starve in a dungeon. And so, I don't know exactly what happened here because it's not totally clear to me. So Cole was a Fade spirit who so strongly empathized with a suffering, dying young boy that he took the form of that boy and became a sort of a human and a spirit at the same time, existing on the physical plane. But he still has his overwhelming feelings of empathy and mercy. So he murders people that are suffering and also murders people that are causing suffering. But he does so with the absolutely most altruistic of ideals. So Cole is he's your assassin. Actually, he is the assassin specialist of your team, but he is strictly assassinating with as much kindness and empathy as possible, which seems a little crazy, but also just the character Cole is a little crazy and pretty fascinating to interact with. He also has the ability of going around unseen and unnoticed, and sometimes people and causing people to forget his presence, which is extremely helpful, I'm sure, for a hitman or / assassin of mercy.
Yeah, it leads to some like pretty funny like banter just around like Skyhold when like people are like talking about things like, oh, there's just like a barrel of knives somewhere. Or like another one is just like somebody's just like leaving like plums on like a windowsill, and you can actually like go up to him and confront him about it because you kind of like get a sense that he might have been involved. And like again, his intentions are like super like altruistic. Like he was leaving plums by the windowsill to attract spiders so that like the healers can take spider silk, which they use for like their mending of like wounded soldiers.
Oh yeah, and he kept the knives away from people that might have used them. Like that was why he had the barrel of knives, was that people wouldn't use them in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty like interesting like how much he sees and like how like mysterious kind of the way he sees the world like is to you and everyone else. I genuinely think he's like probably the most like original character in this whole cast. Like everybody's like kind of like a spin on like an archetype, but Cole is really like something I haven't seen in like an RPG cast before. He's great and has an amazing hat also. Bonus.
Yes.
And also you can find a schematic for a better version of his hat, so you can give him
nice.
you can give him an end game stats version of his own hat later in the game if you want.
All right, I'm dedicating time to that for sure.
Yeah, just find I think it's even called the assassin hat schematic or something. But if you find that, you can make Cole's hat, but with end game materials. We mentioned those two story paths, and we've mentioned Skyhold many times. So if you sort of choose the operation that continues the main story after you recruit Dorian or Cole in one of those two paths, then what happens is the one of them that you did not recruit. So if you do the mage story with time travel, Cole meets you at Haven, or if you do the Cole story with the Templars, then Dorian meets you at Haven, and they warn of an oncoming demon army coming onto Haven right there. So there's a sequence where you defend Haven against a demon attack, and at the end of it, you confront Corypheus, the evil Tevinter Darkspawn mage from the Dragon Age 2 DLC that is one of the original Tevinter mages that visited the Black City in the Fade centuries earlier and created the first blight and created the monstrous race of called Darkspawn that were the principal enemies of Dragon Age Oranges. And that's a whole delving into Dragon Age lore that we don't need to do right now. But that ends with Haven being completely massacred. Several friendly NPCs that you meet in this early part of the game die in Haven and get sort of replaced by other NPCs in your second base. Basically, what happens is there's a big explosion. The Inquisitor is separated from their team, but then found by the team again. And there's sort of an inspirational scene where like everyone in your organization is sort of in this frozen camp and morale is very low. But then the Chantry Priestess that you helped in the Hinterlands at the beginning of the game leads everyone into singing a hymn that gets people's spirits up again. You sort of continue marching up the Frostback Mountains after some guidance from Solus, and you find an abandoned castle called Skyhold. And Skyhold becomes your base for the remainder of the game. And Skyhold is a lot more interesting than Haven, in my opinion. It's a pretty layered base area that's very, very quickly fills with people. The further you get into the game, the more agents you recruit through side quests. Skyhold fills up very, very nicely. You can do requisition missions to build and renovate Skyhold, so it's less a crumbling ruin and more a bustling castle. It's not a transformation at the level of a Suikoden, or let's say a Suikoden, other than Suikoden 3, which Suikoden 3's castle never changes, and that bothered me a little bit. But it's a very, very entertaining base to navigate, and also when you join Skyhold, you officially become the Inquisitor and not just a member of the Inquisition, because Leliana, Solus, and others sort of acknowledge that you are the beacon that everyone's sort of gathering around, because you have the power to stop these rifts, which people are treating as like a sign of the apocalypse. But you, backed by the Inquisition, are able to stop them and save communities left and right. So you become sort of a leader figure and an inspiration figure with the Inquisition, and the Inquisition is trying to build themselves as a force for good in a very dark time that has a Mage-Templar war and a Ferelden Orlais ceasefire going on at the same time. It's crazy, but now that you're in Skyhold, you meet your specialization trainers and can get your champion Reaver specialization, like we mentioned before, or whichever, depending on what class you are. That's when the game truly begins, when you get to Skyhold. And as we alluded to earlier, I really think the most fun way to play Dragon Age, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum or tell people to play the game a certain way, but try to do just the minimum amount of power and influence to get to Skyhold while recruiting all 9 companions is, I think, the most satisfying way to play the game. Because then if you have all 9 team members and start in Skyhold, then you have a lot of freedom, and that it's great. And once you unlock Skyhold, the next story missions are sort of twofold. If you talk to Leliana and Josephine, you learn about a plot to assassinate the Empress of Orlais, and that could send the world into further chaos. And also Varric tells you, hey, I think there's someone you should meet. And he introduces you to Hawk, the main character of Dragon Age 2, who, if you're playing an imported version, will be your exact class and appearance and gender of Hawk from your previous game. I had to use a more generic version of Hawk because I was I had a Dragon Age Keep version to import. And remarkably, the Dragon Age Keep website still mostly works on the PS4 version of Dragon Age Inquisition. I don't know how much of that's going to carry over to Veilguard. So Josephine tells you about the location where you can stop the plot to assassinate the Empress, and Hawk tells you about a Grey Warden. How should I say this? A Grey Warden exile in hiding that you should track down to maybe stop this side plot that Corypheus has going on. And those are the next 2 story steps of the game. going into Orlesian nobility to stop the assassination, and rescuing a large group of Grey Wardens assisted by Hawk from Dragon Age 2. I don't want to talk about those yet. We're going to save those for part 2, but that's sort of, I think, if Act 1 of this game is getting to Skyhold, those are sort of two of the central pillars of Act 2. The Hawk Grey Wardens quest and the grand game Orlesian Empire quest. But let's see, is there anything we really have is there anything that we in this first half of the game that we want to address before going into sort of the end of this podcast?
I mean, I'll just throw out that like the whole boardroom stuff where you're kind of like making macro political moves around like Orlais and Ferelden. Like, it has no right to be as engaging as it is. Like, I don't know why I get so into like just being in that boardroom, but I totally do. To like elaborate on it like a bit more, like you have like all these like little like points of interests around like areas that you've either been to or like are gonna go to, or at least like are around those areas, where like just different developments are happening, and you basically get to choose which of your 3 advisors, Liliana, Josephine, or Cullen, you think are like best suited to address that particular situation. And like you have like this description to go off of, and then like as you hover over like their 3 like kind of character cards, like they give like their plan about like how they'd go about addressing it, and like sometimes like they'll even like lead to like different like rewards or like levels of success depending on who you send. And it's like very just like menu based and like sort of like reading descriptions, but I think like it's done brilliantly. And I just like also just love the character cards they have in this game, like the concept art that goes on them, that you get to look at as you're kind of flipping through your different options. Like that just adds a lot to the experience as well.
There's so much good writing in there, and so much of it is just how different the result of those quests can be based on who you choose to complete them. Because you have those choices of any of your 3 advisors to complete almost any task. Sometimes 1 or 2 are locked out.
Mm-hmm.
But you always have that blurb of like what they're going to do in order to solve that problem, and the results change based on that. And it really feels like having an impact on the world, even though it's all, primarily contained in text. It feels impactful in a global way that the series hasn't really pulled off before.
Yeah,
and
and I was mentioning, I mentioned earlier in the episode that a lot of the flow of this game is going to your board and going out into the world, going into your board, going out into the world. The machinations you do on this sort of political mechanics of the game will unlock things in the real world, well, in the open world segments. It's a feedback loop that feeds into each other, and it's more fun the deeper you get into it. My big problem is that sometimes the visibility on that board is pretty poor. Like if you hover over something and read it but can't do it at the time or decide to do it later, sometimes it's not easy to find and highlight again. There's
that's the worst part of it.
Yeah.
No
sometimes if I suspect there might be a menu item somewhere, but I'm not sure, I'll sort of just hover my cursor over it and just see what invisible board pieces I can find. Maybe some I haven't done yet. Maybe I've done all of them at this point. But that's the one thing I dislike about the system. And Paul, I'm sure there's mods to increase the visibility of those board pieces.
I mean, it hasn't been a problem with a mouse and keyboard. But I just like the fact that not only like they're not inconsequential. They're not just like, some of them are just, hey, that's a little tidbit of lore or whatever. But like when you're an elf, what you decide to do on that board determines whether or not your whole clan lives or dies. And the same goes for another, like we'll probably talk about it more in the second episode, but the same goes for another really well-known organization within the universe. So like, and I think some of those are bold, because if you make those choices and they're supposed to carry over to like the next game or whatever, that really limits what the writers can and can't do in the future. And so it kind of makes me wonder if they had some ideas, like, hey, we're going to throw away this organization, or we're going to throw away these people. We're never going to write about these guys again. It doesn't matter. And yeah, so it's like it's not just flavor. Some of the stuff you do there matters, at least to me.
To me, it's all flavorful, but some of it is truly impactful, and some of it is just flavor.
Sure,
But still, it gives you tangible in-game rewards, even if that reward is just like, I don't know, 120 gold or 30 points of influence. But it also gives you narrative reward because there's a lot of writing and sometimes really fascinating glimpses into the Dragon Age lore when you do it. Again, there is we haven't talked about this that much. We talked about how much we like the characters and dialogue, but there's so much writing in this game. Every side quest you do has a codex entry describing everyone in it. From when you unlock it and when you resolve it. Whenever you're walking around and you read someone's letter on the ground that leads you to a treasure cache somewhere in the same zone, there's an incredible amount of dense text in this game, and a lot of it's really good. This is a world that they have a lot of mental and emotional real estate invested in. That's I think I personally, again, I'm approaching this as a fan of a fan since probably 2010 or so. This is a richly designed world full of that I can't get enough of engaging in. It's I'm having a real good time playing this game. Again, I'm basically at the point where we stopped. I have done the Hawk side quest, but I'm just outside the Empress side quest now. I'm level 22 and I've played more than 50 hours. I've cleaned up a lot of these zones, including one we haven't mentioned yet, the Exalted Plains, which is sort of a highlands and wooded area that's a battlefield in Ceasefire. I mean, I haven't collected every single shard or every single icon on the map, but I've just been going into every area, cleaning up 80% of it, and then moving on to the next area. And I've killed 10 high dragons as a result. But I haven't done any of the DLC zones yet, and I haven't done the storyline after the Hawk and Grey Warden stuff yet. So that's where I'm next. I know most of us have a lot of games still to go, so we're going to save that for the second half. I'd love to go into more character, resolution kinds of quests. I'd like to get into the second half storyline, of course. There's a lot of lore implications for the end game, especially around one character that I think we've been deliberately avoiding talking about. Listeners, if you haven't played Dragon Age Inquisition before, maybe you even know who this is because they figure prominently into Dragon Age Veilguard coming later this year. I've had so much fun revisiting this over the last 3 weeks to a month that I am probably going to get back to playing this 10 minutes after this podcast is done recording. But Aleks, I know that I think you're the only one here that is playing this game for the first time. How like, is there a part of the story or a certain thread you're excited about for part 2?
I mean, I just like really love this cast. Like it's too early to say, but it might be my favorite Dragon Age cast, which is saying a lot. So I'm looking forward to getting more into like the character quest lines and like seeing where those end up going. And in terms of like one like story moment that really stood out in the first half, like that whole sequence when you go back, that when you side with the mages and like you first meet Dorian and you're kind of like sent into like that distant future, like the Leliana's like performance like really makes that whole sequence, like where she's just kind of like explaining to you and Dorian that like, hey, like, yeah, that this felt like a single like minute to you, but like this has been a lifetime of suffering for us. And it's
intense.
Yeah, it's very intense, and she just absolutely kills it with like making it feel like as serious as it most certainly is. So yeah, that was like really great. So I'm looking forward to like seeing more of those like main like story-based missions and seeing like the sorts of developments that come out of those, because they did an amazing job with that one.
Yeah, again, that feels like, an episode of a Saturday morning cartoon where the protagonist gets launched into the future and sees everything that went wrong when they were, because they've been gone for X amount of time, and then get sent back into the past to save the day again. There's a real good Vandal Savage episode of Justice League like that. But again, like a very good version of that. This game is playing around with the story they've been the story and the world they've been building over the course of 2 games. I mean, the Mage-Templar conflict is at its sort of most prominent in these early quests, but there's one segment very much about the Fade and the Grey Wardens, and another one that is about the Grand Game. The Empress of Orlais stuff is about the Grand Game stuff that Leliana described as a bard in Dragon Age Oranges, and is the subject of one of the Dragon Age Oranges DLCs, which is a pretty good DLC. The Leliana, Bard DLC is fun in that game. But and we just did an episode talking about DLCs, and I'm not sure we mentioned that one, Audra.
Oh no,
this is just pretty good though. But anyway, this is a very, very broad and dense video game that has so much to do that I and just because I've been reading old forum threads and Reddit posts over the course of playing it, because I'm trying to find what's the best way to what's the best crafting materials for a 2-handed axe and stuff like that. People have been just replaying these games over and over for 10 years and the community is really dedicated, and there's even factionalization, not as quite as deadly as Mages versus Templars, on whether to be excited for Veilguard or whether Veilguard is going to betray what made these first 3 games great, even though all 3 games feel so different in structure and gameplay, but not in tone and character, because all 3 of them balance hope in a very bleak world, rooted in Western fantasy, but a very BioWare interpretation of that Western fantasy. I'm repeating myself. I think this game's great. I'm excited to play more of it. I hope you guys are excited as I am to record this in another episode in another week. But maybe it's obvious, listeners. Next week we're doing our part 2 of our Dragon Age Inquisition podcasts. I'm excited to get to those, but that won't happen for a little while yet because I still have more video game to play. But thank you so much for joining us on part 1 of our Dragon Age Inquisition podcasts. If you've played these before, I hope we didn't get too many details wrong. If you haven't played these before, I hope we got you more interested in playing them, because I know some people listen to podcasts without totally understanding the subjects, and you're here for the banter or the education rather than the shared experience. There's no wrong way to enjoy podcasts, but there is maybe a wrong way to play this game. Don't spend too much time in the hinterlands. Wes.
I'll do my
those
best. I make no
skulls.
promises.
But there's no way to listen, wrong way to listen to Retro Encounter. You can listen to them from 1 to 430 if you want. You can go jump around, because we always try to just be as truthful as we can to ourselves and the games we're playing. And I can describe some of the games we're playing next month. We're after some very trying months in a row for poor Michael Sollosi. I've played Dark Souls and Dragon Age Inquisition back to back. I wanted some short games in my life after those long involved RPGs. So we're doing a short game September next month, and giving 3 indie narrative games sort of dedicated solo episodes in September. They are Firewatch, Case of the Golden Idol, and Day of the Tentacle, which I believe is 3 different decades of narrative RPGs that all have very, very different, interesting approaches to video game stories. I'm really excited to play all of them because, spoiler alert, this will be my first time playing all 3 of those. So please look forward to those coming in December. No, September, not December. Whoops. Woo-hoo-hoo. Oh, man, now I'm even getting months wrong. Now you really know it's time to end the podcast. But listeners, if you want to reach out to us about Dragon Age Inquisition or Firewatch, or who the best romance option in Dragon Age 2 is, you don't have to message us about that when it's Isabella. But you can always email us retro@rpgfan.com. You can also follow RPG Fan on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or on Discord. We are always called either RPG Fan or RPG Fancom at those places. You can go to the proper rpgfan.com to find our daily news articles, features, reviews, all manner of RPG content to enjoy on the main website, including a shop. We have on rpgfan.com/shop. There are 2 storefronts, one hosted by TeePublic, where you can get RPG Fan apparel and accessories, and a second link hosted by Hyperplay RPG, where you can buy the RPG Fan Reviews collection, a 300-page tome of single-page RPG Fan reviews from over the years. RPG Fan also is a network of 3 podcasts, and not just Retro Encounter. Our other 2 podcasts are Random Encounter every 2 weeks on Mondays about randomness and what games we're playing, and Rhythm Encounter every alternating 2 weeks about RPG music. You can listen to and review Random, Rhythm, Rhythm and Retro Encounters on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or however you choose to listen to podcasts. Please give us feedback at your discretion, especially if it's 5 stars out of 5. But if you want to give us feedback as individuals, as giving feedback to humans, that's a little bit soulless of me to say. But let's tell the listeners how to do that. Where can you find us on social media? Starting with you, Audra.
JB@rpgfan.com.
Now, Aleks.
You can email me at alexfranacek@gmail.com.
Now, Paul.
You can find me in the RPG fan Discord as just Paul.
That works. And now, Wes.
You can find me on Twitter at Wes Iliff, or on the RPG Fan Discord as just Wes.
And listeners, if you want to find me online, it's not that hard. I am at Evoker for Dogs, whether it's on Blue Sky, Instagram, or RPG Fans Discord. So, we have a lot of Dragon Age ahead of us, and all I can say is, if you're playing this game for the first time, you do not want to deprive yourself of the delightful Dorian. Get out of those hinterlands. Thank you, good night, and good luck.